left-hand path, right-hand path, or is there a sacred middle way? Was the path of Jesus a middle way? Have you ever felt confused about your own spiritual path and how to walk out your calling as a human made in the likeness of God? Stay with me for the next few minutes as we soften into an understanding that I think will breathe life into your being. I'm Michelle Francesca. This is Inspiration for Life, and I invite you to reach out for personal coaching and ministry that empowers from the inside out. Okay, there is a belief in some circles that spiritual paths must be chosen strictly. The right-hand path or the left-hand path. Obedience or autonomy. Self-denial or self-deification. Transcendence or embodiment. But what if this binary is not only false, it's harmful to the soul? The first time I heard a teaching on the two spiritual paths and the idea that one had to choose strictly between the two, everything in me felt like there must be a third way, a middle way. And I did a lot of studying and I did a lot of praying. And from what I see in scripture and other sacred writings and the writings of mystics, there is a middle way, and this is the path that Jesus walked. The right-hand path emphasizes surrender, reverence, law, and alignment with divine order. The left-hand path emphasizes individuation, empowerment, shadow integration, and self-realization. And at first glance, they seem opposed. But I want to suggest today, what if both are incomplete without each other? Jesus honored divine will. Not my will, but yours be done, he said. Yet he also claimed, I and the Father are one. He followed sacred traditions and he broke them when they no longer served love. He taught compassion, but he also spoke with piercing truth, calling out hypocrisy and claiming his own inner authority. This is the paradox of the middle way. Not compromise, but an alchemical integration. In mysticism, wholeness is not found or experienced by swinging between extremes, but by transcending duality. The mystic path is not either or, it is both and. Jesus lived this. He didn't discard the sacred laws. He fulfilled them from a deeper place. He didn't erase the ego. He transfigured it in love. He didn't abandon the idea of God. He embodied God. Many of us at some point experienced or brushed shoulders with a spirituality that says self equals bad, ego equals enemy. But I want to suggest that Jesus did not erase the ego. He transfigured it in love. In much of religion, especially fear-based or control-based systems, the ego is portrayed as the villain, the part of us that must be crushed, denied, or annihilated to be acceptable to God. You've been there. But let's pause and ask, is the ego truly evil? Or is it simply awaiting transformation, immature, needing transformation? Can the ego, in fact, be a helpful friend to one's journey if brought into sacred service? The ego is not inherently wicked, obviously. It's the psychological structure that helps us say, I am. It's what gives us a sense of self, story, memory, will, and identity, and therefore it is kind of vital for life on earth. Without the ego, there's no personhood, and therefore no capacity or awareness of capacity to love and to choose. This is really important. So the problem is not ego. It's unhealed, if we can say that, unexamined or unaligned ego that believes itself to be the center of everything. Okay, we're talking about left-hand path, right-hand path, or is there a middle way? I believe Jesus did walk that middle way. He didn't come to annihilate the idea of self. He came to reveal its divine origin and call it into wholeness. He didn't teach self-hatred. He modeled self-possession grounded in love and service. He never said, deny yourself because it's bad. He said, deny yourself daily, meaning let go of the small, egocentric reactions that seek self-preservation at the expense of love. So here's the key. Even in that invitation of denying the self, the small egocentric reactionary behaviors, right? That Jesus preserved the you. He preserved the you that chooses, the you who responds in love. The self is not to be annihilated. It's not to be lost. It's to be liberated. We're not erasing the ego. We're transfiguring it in love. And this was demonstrated by Jesus. What does it mean to transfigure the ego so we can walk this middle way? To transfigure the ego is to take the raw material of your human personality, your gifts, drives, and desires, and baptize that in love, all of you in love. It's to let the idea of self that's built on fear, built on shame, and built on control to fall into the arms of love. I liked saying that because we talk about a fall, but I think we misunderstand the whole potential of that fall. Let me say that again. The idea of self that's built on fear, shame, and control, let it fall, die even, into the arms of love. So the true self, grounded in divine union, can rise. Transfiguring the ego is no longer seeing the ego as the master, but as a servant, and a useful servant at that, of the soul and of the whole. The middle way. Jesus embodied this. He knew who he was and declared it. I am the light of the world. He didn't inflate his identity, but he didn't hide it either. He owned his divine calling, not for self-glory, but to serve and to heal. He said, before Abraham was, I am. Not as egoic arrogance, but as awakened realization. This is not ego deletion, this is ego transfiguration. Not erasure, but elevation. Ooh. Not suppression, but surrender to love so complete that the self, small s, becomes a unified vessel, an integrated, fully integrated vessel of the sacred in its wholeness. Rather than swinging between self-loathing and self-exaltation, we allow the ego to bow to love and to be reshaped, refined, and resurrected as a conscious co-creator. Wow, that is magnificent potential that we carry as humans made in the likeness of God. This is Christ-like transformation. We began by asking the question, left-hand path or right-hand path? Is there a middle way, a sacred middle way? Was the path of Jesus a middle way? Have you ever felt confused about your own spiritual path and how to walk out your calling as human, made in the likeness of God? And we talked about what each of those paths essentially mean and how they are seen as opposed against each other, when in fact the middle way brings them together into unity. The middle way is to realize your inner voice and divine will are not at war. They are meant to be in harmony. Your selfhood and your surrender are not enemies. They are dancing in collaboration. Your power and your humility are not opposites. They are two wings of the same bird. This path invites you to hold paradox, to mature beyond rigid formulas, and to become a living temple of spirit. So no, you do not have to choose between left and right, light and shadow, heaven and earth, God and self. You are invited to live as both the altar and the flame. This is the path of Christ within you. This is the middle way. It reclaims Jesus' words. Narrow is the way that leads to life. Not as a warning of religious gatekeeping, but as a spiritual invitation to mature mystery and mastery. The narrow way. Perhaps the path is narrow, not because it's exclusive, but because few dare to walk in paradox. Paradox is the middle way. Here's final thought. They told me I must choose to bow or to rise, to submit or to shine, to vanish into God or crown myself as one. But Christ walked another way. He sang with stars and wept with dust. He followed love beyond the rules and broke the bread of being. He was not servant or king, he was both and something beyond. The path he left is not a line, but a spiral, winding between silence and fire, wounds and wisdom, heaven and heartbeat. So I walk, not to be right, not to be left or left behind, but to become whole. To find God not in the sky and not in my skin, but in the space, the spaciousness, where both dissolve. The middle way is not the absence of tension. It is the holy marriage of all things. And I am learning to walk where love walks and ever will. I just wanted to share those thoughts with you today on the possibility that we are not choosing strictly between a left-hand path and a right-hand path, but can find a middle way. I believe it's what Jesus demonstrated. And perhaps it is the narrow way that is not narrow because of exclusion, but because few dare to walk in paradox. Do reach out if you would like to connect for personal coaching or ministry, and I would be delighted to help you in your spiritual journey or anything that you may be facing at this time. Thanks for joining me. This is Inspiration for Life, and I look forward to seeing you next time.